Imagine standing in the heart of Paris, and the entire city, absolutely everyone, from the beggars in the alleys to the ministers in their offices, has frozen in a single, collective breath. The date is June 1st, 1885. A simple, unadorned coffin moves slowly through the streets, followed by 2 million people. This is not the funeral of a king, nor is it a victory parade. It is a final farewell to a man who became something more than just a writer for France. He became its conscience, its pain, and its hope. His name was Victor Hugo, and his life was so grand and simultaneously so unbearably tragic that it feels like the greatest novel of the 19th century itself. We are used to seeing Hugo in old portraits. A stern old man with a white beard, a literal literary god looking down on us from the heights of his greatness. But behind this granite facade was a man whose inner world was torn apart by contradictions that would have crushed any ordinary mortal. He was born in an era when the old world order was collapsing under the boots of Napoleon, and this collapse happened right inside his family. His father was a general in Napoleon's army, a gruff soldier devoted to the empire. His mother was a refined aristocrat who hated the revolution with all her heart and dreamed of the return of kings. Little Victor grew up on a battlefield between these two worlds, between love and hate, between the red uniform of his father and the white lilies of his mother. This struggle laid the foundation for the Hugo we know, a man who would always stand on the side of the weak, yet strive for an absolute, almost divine greatness. He was a prodigy, obsessed with success. At 15, he wrote in his diary, "I want to be Chateaubriand, or nothing," and he became it. By 30, he was already the leading star of French literature, the leader of Romanticism, a man who drove the youth mad and made old academics tremble with rage. He had everything: fame, money, a beautiful wife, and adored children. It seemed he had defeated fate itself. Но у судьбы были свои планы на этого титана. But fate had its own plans for this titan. On September 4th, 1843, Hugo's life shattered forever. His beloved daughter, Leopoldine, his sunlight as he called her, went for a boat ride on the Seine with her husband. A sudden squall hit, and the boat capsized. Leopoldine, weighed down by her heavy dress, began to drown. Her husband, unable to save her, chose to go to the bottom with her. Hugo learned of this from a newspaper, accidentally opening it in a cafe on his way home. In that moment, something died within him. A man who wrote thousands of pages a year fell silent for 10 years. 10 years of silence filled with unbearable grief. He would go to the river, stare at the water, and realize that all his words and all his fame were not worth a single breath of his girl. This personal abyss transformed him from a brilliant man of letters into a man who felt on his own skin what true, hopeless darkness was. And it was out of this darkness that Les Misérables was born. It is not just a book about the convict Jean Valjean. It is a manifesto of compassion, written with his heart's blood. When the dictatorship of Napoleon III, whom Hugo contemptuously called Napoleon the Little, was established in France, the writer did not remain silent. He chose exile. For nearly 20 years, he lived on rocky islands in the ocean, looking at the shores of France through the fog and sea spray. There, amidst the storms, he wrote his greatest lines. He stood on a cliff, buffeted by all the winds, the lone voice that dared to speak, the truth to a tyrant. He became a living symbol of resistance, but tragedies continued to haunt him like shadows. He outlived almost all of his children. His second daughter, Adele, went mad from unrequited love, and spent the rest of her life in a psychiatric clinic, failing to recognize her own father. his sons died one by one. Hugo was left alone on the summit of his Olympus, surrounded by the ghosts of those he loved. This was his great irony. He was the most celebrated man in the world, his name known in every hut, yet a ringing silence reigned in his own home. In his final years, he became an earthly deity to the French. When he turned 80, Paris held a celebration, the likes of which had not been seen since coronations. Hundreds of thousands of people passed under his windows just to catch a glimpse of the old man's shadow behind the curtain. He died leaving a will of just a few lines. "I leave 50,000 francs to the poor. I wish to be taken to the cemetery in a pauper's hearse. I believe in God." Victor Hugo was not just a writer. He was an ocean in which incredible pride and boundless love for humanity were mixed. He showed us that even if the system turns you into nothing, even if fate takes away your most precious things, you can still remain a man with a capital M. He turned his personal pain into a light that still warms millions of people around the world. And when we open his books, we don't just hear a voice from the past. We hear the heartbeat of a man who was not afraid to embrace the whole world with all its suffering and its beauty.